Excellent. Thank you very much. Coaches, thanks for coming. Be remiss if we didn't welcome Sharon to the show as well.
Sharon's
Thanks for
here.
coming. Yeah, if you're curious who's next to Coach Rolovich, that is that an amazing animal right there, and hopefully, it doesn't come alive. But we've
Hey.
all been living a different life as of late, and I want to take these 15 minutes and dive into things that just happened from the spring meetings, but also what's going on in everybody's real life. So when I was preparing for this, I was like, wow, two of you guys grew up with fathers who were coaches, and Coach Rolovich, your dad was a firefighter.
Yeah.
And they all mentored you in different ways. I'm curious for each of you, and Coach Shaw, I'll start with you, but how have you taken the principles from your dad that you learned from him as a coach and applied them to now leading all these young men during this really unique time in their world and everybody's really around the globe?
Well, I can take the whole 15 minutes. I'll be very quick. My dad, before my first internship, before my first job in football, just said, and just basically be yourself. And that's the advice you give all the time. But what I learned, what he was really talking about was, in order to truly engage with your players, for them to listen to you, you have to be authentic. You have to be yourself. You have to be honest. You have to be open. You have to be accessible. For all of his years that he coached, and I watched all these guys 20, 30 years come back to him and thank him for the influence they had both in their football lives and their non-football lives. It's because he was real. He was real with them. He was honest with them. He was open with them. And that's the thing I take into everything, which is I'm not going to try to be like somebody else, but I'm just going to be myself, and I'm going to be who I need to be to reach my players and know that they can always talk to me and take some constructive criticism. At the same time, I'll be the first to celebrate them.
Excellent. Coach Helton, how about you? During this time, how have you leaned on some of the things you've seen?
Yeah, Dad was a tremendous relationship builder. He knew how to coach guys really hard, but also loved them along the way. And he always told me the importance of building those relationships and building that trust. And, how do you build trust? He taught me to build trust, one, through a man's character, two, being competent and knowledgeable in what you do to help develop young men, three, show them care and concern, and then four, be honest with them at all times. Be brutally honest to help them grow and let them know to be coached is to be loved. So the relation aspect of the game, I think, is critical, especially in today's time. Right now with what we're going through, they got to know that you care.
Excellent. Coach Rollo?
Yeah, my dad was a fireman. He taught me, well, one of his sayings was, never eat soup in the rain, you'll never finish, which has been good advice moving forward. The other thing he always says was, it's all in your head. It's all in your head. It got me into visualization, and really, if you put your mind to it, you can make some stuff happen. So.
Yeah, that's well said. I think it's been masterful just connecting with different coaches in this conference and your staffs of how you've been making sure your guys are right mentally, because they're not next to you. Like this sport, we're always around each other. So for Coach Shaw, you've been in this conference for a while now. You weren't around your fellow coaches at the spring meetings. What was that like if you gave us some insight into those meetings? And then coming out of it, everybody has the same question, like, when are we going to play? Like, what were the discussions like? Because I'm sure they were broad and in-depth around that thought.
Well, I think Woody Dixon's done a great job of leading and guiding a lot of different conversations we've had to have, both with our coaches and then with our working group that we have. And what I love about our conference, honestly, is our engagement. Our guys can talk to each other. There's a lot of mutual respect. There's a lot of guys coming from a lot of different angles and things that I come in thinking one way, and then Clay brings something up. I'm like, oh, I didn't think of it that way. And Chip Kelly brings, hey, think about it this way. And so I think we've got a really good group of guys that, first of all, love the sport and want the sport to be played at a high level. And there's a lot of mutual respect to say that, gosh, if we can all find a way to get back, let's all contribute to a way to get back at some point in time. So I think our meetings have been very productive, and I think we've all given and we've all learned a lot. I think we're in a good position right now to handle whatever happens as far as national and local governments say, and all of our individual schools. But I think our conversations have been really, really good. We've got a lot of bright guys, a lot of great ideas, and hopefully we put ourselves in position to handle whatever comes our way.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Coach Helton, we were told that you guys were able to talk to a doctor from the University of Washington, I believe, and they talked about the testing and the protocols, like when we are able to, if able to get back together. What did you learn about that? And what can you share about that reality if it comes to be?
Yeah, the one thing that I was very appreciative of is how much care and concern foremost is going into the student athletes and the staff members of when we do get the opportunity to report back that the number one priority is the health and the safety of those that are involved. And that's what I took away from the amount of detail from testing to being able to have secure environments to be able to meet, to practice, and all the meetings that are being had. It was just an unbelievable wealth of knowledge that was being thrown at us. And it also shows you how grand a scope and how big a project that this is going to be as we get back into that safe environment. So, I walked away from it going, wow, there's some brilliant people that are really diving into this, that are formulating a plan, and just an appreciation that the health and safety of our student athletes is priority one.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating just to hear about like all the layers to this thing. I mean, it's not as though you could show up on campus and then just go play.
Mm-hmm.
Coach Rollo, I'm sure you hoped that was the case when you became the head coach, but you haven't had a ton of time around your guys, but you were able to get to know them a little bit early on when you were there. How have you been able to stay connected? Because you've gone through tragedy. You had a player and his family, Renard Bell, had COVID-19. Curious the ways in which you've been able to do that.
Well, as much as we can through Zoom, but it's really allowed us to focus on those personal relationships. We can't do a lot of football stuff. I mean, we could install some, but it's more about it gave us real time to concentrate on getting to know who our guys are and let them figure out who we are as people. And, I think it's been productive and just excited to get on the field when we can.
Yeah, no, couldn't agree more. Coach Shaw, scenarios, like we read about a lot of them. What are the processes that you guys went through in those meetings about talking about, okay, perfect world, we're back tomorrow, unrealistic, shortened season, push season? If you can glean some insight into the scenarios that we've seen, I'd love to hear a few of them.
Yeah, I mean, once again, that's a long conversations we've had a lot. I'm on the working group as well as talking to the coaches, and there's so many, but the most important thing is Clay hinted towards and talked about very specifically, what is the safest way to go about doing what we want to do? And we have to have processes that are vetted by our medical professionals, and then we have to have contingency plans. So we start with what makes the most sense, what's the best way to do what we're going to do. If you have a completely open campus, that's one thing. If you have a partially open campus, what can you do with your students and your student athletes? How can we get them back in the weight room? What's the process of bringing people back together anyway? What's the quarantine look like? What does the testing look like? Many of us believe that the testing is going to be different 2 months from now than it is now. The rapid diagnostic testing is something that's got to be vital to us reincorporating people back into one small area. If someone does test positive, we got to find out quickly and isolate them very quickly. So those things have to be in place before we can go to step two. But at the same time, we have to talk about step one, step two, step three, step four, in order to be ready for the eventuality of us getting back together. And if something does happen, we have to have talked about it, met about it, talked to professionals about it, and have a process in place for whatever happens when we start to reincorporate our people back on campus.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much just on the front end, Coach Helton, but do you guys talk about like even the back end too of, okay, well, what would the playoff look like? Should it be expanded if we only play 9 conference games? What's up with the draft? Like, are those conversations happening, or is it just all about like, how do we just get to step one right now?
No, those conversations have been had. We're all optimistic as coaches. I think we're half glass full people, and we're optimistic about a season. We don't know what that timing is of a start date, and we don't know the structure. But we've been talking about all different scenarios about the opportunity maybe to starting on time, the opportunity maybe it's pushed back. The opportunity maybe it's more of an abbreviated conference schedule. What does the playoff look like? All those discussions are being had not only in conference meeting with the head coaches, but the commissioners and the NCAA to put together the best structure we can for a season. I think at the end of the day, what I've taken away from coaches is I think we're all going to have a tremendous gratitude, whatever that structure is, to be able to play the game that we love and to feel fortunate enough that if we're in that scenario, that this virus and this crisis has been put a little bit further behind us. And so I think there's a amount of gratitude that goes to having the opportunity to play the game that we love. We'll find out probably 6 to 8 weeks from now what a clearer picture is of that start date, that structure, how the end of the season is, that relationship with the NFL and how it plays into that and to their timeline and calendar. But right now there is a lot of unknown. But the discussions and the meetings are happening weekly, hourly, to be honest with you, about what that looks like.
Yeah, so many smart people in the room. Coach Rolo, up where you live, I believe there's only been 19 cases in the county which you guys reside. What's the process been like regarding being in the state you're in, yet at the region you're in, COVID-19 has not overtaken it like it has in other parts of the Pac-12 footprint?
No, it hasn't, which has been a blessing for the people here and our students that are still here. It's just one of the strange realities of our current situation is some areas are affected more, and state lines, trump kind of regions, I think, at this point. So, we're all in with Washington, and I think everyone's trying to do the right thing. We've just been, we haven't had it as bad as some other regions of the West Coast.
Unfortunately, Coach Rolo, you haven't been able to go to the spring meetings in person. So I got to ask the two guys that have been in the conference for a while, have you given any advice to Coach Rolo in his first year coming into this conference?
Don't give me that ninth green at 9 p.m. deal. I know that trick already.
I'll say this. I thought, what an unbelievable hire by Washington State. To have a Mike Leach that's an offensive-minded, brilliant guy, big personality. As soon as Rolo was hired, it was like, wow, what an awesome fit. You're talking about an extremely brilliant offensive guy that has also a personality that's big, that relates to kids. And as soon as you saw that go across the wire, you were like, man, that's a really neat hire. That's a really good fit. So, Rolo, don't change, man. Be yourself, just like Coach said. You got there for a reason, being you. Do the same thing, bud.
I love it. Coach Shaw?
I would just say go after all those records, man. All those Mike Leake records, man. Break them all. Preferably against Clay and not me. Go ahead and break them all.
I love that. All right, so Coach Rolo, I got to ask, and Coach Shaw and Coach Helton, you may know this already, but in your previous job, at least the legend is that you'd show up at media days, which will be virtual here this year in the Pac-12, but you would show up at media days and you would bring a gift for every coaching staff or every head coach from the region which you came from. Do you plan on doing it at the Pac-12? And if so, can we get a little insight into what you might be gifting these two other head coaches?
Well, I think it was a small thing, but the coaches that bought in, it really gave us a camaraderie. I think that Coach Shaw spoke about this conference already. And it helped us uplift the whole conference, I think. And I would probably bring some Cougar Gold cheese if I was going to do it this year. But guys got into it, and I think it kind of lightened it up a little bit and kind of gave us all kind of a human element that maybe we're not always able to put out there. So it was good. And when we get back to the meeting in person, I think we'll get something going.
All right, I love that. Well, I got an idea for you. I busted this out. I got a hat, and then I figured get a little tape, just like you did,
right there,
all around town, right? I mean, I saw you do that on the internet, Coach. That was great. But overall, guys, we could talk forever. There's a ton of detail. This thing flew by. I know the rest of the media is standing by. Over, I believe, 100 members are here. So I'll get out of the way, and Dave Hirsch will be bringing you questions from different media members. Dave, take it away.
All right, thanks, Yogi. All right, we'll go ahead and take questions from the media. And again, if you have a question, please select the raise hand tab at the bottom of the screen to put you in the queue, and then we'll go ahead and take the questions. So the first one up will be Dennis Dodd. Dennis, go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me, guys?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. I guess for Clay and David, what I don't know what the verb is, but what level of concern do you have that California will be open in time along with everyone else to start the season in concert?
Well, I can go first, Dave, if that's okay. Obviously there's a lot of unknown out there. And like I said earlier, Dennis, I really think we're going to get a lot clearer picture about 6 to 8 weeks from now. We all are glass half full guys. I think we're all optimistic and having the opportunity to play a season, and just not knowing, what that start date looks like or what that structure looks like. The one thing that I have been encouraged by about all our meetings has been, the discussions have been on a national scope. Everybody's got a different situation. Everybody could have, the opportunity to be back on campus with volunteer workouts, or some of us are still going through stay-at-home orders. We're all in different scenarios, but the one thing I've been very appreciative of in the discussions has been the opportunity to start all together, and just not knowing when that start date is, or what that structure is going to look like. But I think we're all optimistic as the NCAA and as coaches to have that opportunity to play together.
Yeah, David.
Yeah, Clay said it really well, and I've been encouraged also by, although our governor has been probably one of the most outspoken and aggressive governors in the nation. He's also been in great communication with other states as well, to Oregon and Washington in particular, and trying to trade ideas and talk about different things. And hopefully there are some regional things that do happen as we get closer to the start of football, to where most of our states, if not all of our states on the West Coast, can kind of be on a similar timeline. But at the very least, it's comforting to know that they've been in communication.
That's good. Thank you.
Okay, next question will go to Dirk Facer. Go ahead, Dirk. Your line may be muted.
On mute, Dirk.
All right, we'll go to the next one. We'll go to Elliot Allman. Go ahead, Elliot.
Hi, hopefully you can hear me. I think I am muted. Good afternoon. Thanks for taking time, everybody. David, I would like to ask you, you identify some of the issues with recruiting. Everything kind of, because of the lockdown, you can't have these face-to-face. You can't travel to campuses and see the kids, and you're maybe having to sign guys sight unseen. What have been some of the issues for you on this?
Well, you hit on a couple big ones. Not being able to talk to people face to face. I think, especially in our conference, we've got some unbelievable campuses, and not being able to bring people on campus and show them around campus and show them where their dorms are going to be, and show them the football aspect and the academic aspect, in particular for a place like Stanford, which we think that's a strong suit for us, for the entire student athlete, and being able to be on campus with all these great people. That's something that we've missed. So I think all of us have gotten really good at Zooming, FaceTiming, etc. Being able to give them some kind of an experience with all of our people on campus, both our football staff and our faculty. So that's been a challenge for us, to make sure that we can still show all parts of our experience, athletic and academic, to our prospective student athletes. So I think it's forced all of us to get some ingenuity, be a little forward thinking, think a little bit outside the box, outside of some of our comfort zones, right? Most of us in the coaching profession hadn't heard of Zoom before a month ago, and now we're all experts. So I think we've all had to adapt and adjust and make the most of the situation.
Thank you.
All right, next question will go to Pete Arbogast. Go ahead, Pete.
Let's see, am I unmuted now? Am I okay?
You're okay. You're good to go.
Awesome. Hi, guys. How you doing? I wonder if anybody has ever brought up a scheduling idea that I thought of from back in World War II. I'm not that old, but I know of it, where we eliminate non-conference games and play all 11 conference games against the 11 conference teams, and then go to the championship game. Is that something that's been brought up?
Yeah, I can answer. Yes, it's been discussed in our Pac-12 meetings, and it's been discussed by the commissioners. That is one of the many structures as we go through this situation and this crisis, that the possibility of a all conference schedule. That is one of the structures under discussion, depending on where we are at, 6 to 8 weeks from now. But those are viable discussions, and it has been brought up in our meetings.
And I'll throw on top of that, as Clay mentioned too, a little bit earlier, and that affects our bowls, that affects the CFP. So these are all big conversations that we have in our conferences, but also we're going to take Mr. Hancock and his group, the CFP, to really find out how best to finish this hopefully great college football season.
Okay, next question will go to Ryan Carty. Go ahead, Ryan.
Thanks, guys, for taking our questions. For all three of you, the notion of playing in empty stadiums has been a scenario that's been discussed for a lot of other sports. College football obviously is pretty different in many ways from professional sports. How reasonable do you guys think that would be to be able to play a game in an empty college football stadium? And what would be your biggest logistical concern in terms of keeping players safe, especially when it would be an admission that it might not be safe to have fans in the stands in that sense?
You want to start, Rolo?
What do you want to know, Ryan? I think it'd save a lot of time on silent count practice. There's one. I think in general, if we feel it's safe enough to play, then I'd like to play. I don't necessarily. I know that the fans is part of the experience. It's also part of the financial model. So, but that's not in my job description. So we're just trying to hopefully get some games this fall.
Yeah, Ryan, I think that the one thing, again, I've been very appreciative in all our talks with the Pac-12 as well as the NCAA and all the doctors, is the health and priority has been priority. I mean, health and safety of our student athletes has been priority one in the whole time. There's going to be a time period. We don't know when that's going to be, when we can be back together as 110 men and staff members on top of that and go play the game we love. And I think when we're given the opportunity, whenever that time is, I think all of us as coaches, players, we're going to be grateful. Don't know the start date of that. Don't know the structure. Don't know if it's going to have fans or not fans. That's the unknown. But I know we're going to be grateful to be able to play the game we love, and meaning that the virus is probably a little bit further behind us. When's the grand day of celebration? The grand day of celebration is when we're all back together. When we're part of college football is the passion of the fans, and we love that. And that's going to be the celebration, whatever that time point is, when we're all back together in a safe environment to be able to all enjoy the game. But I think, like I said earlier, I think when we do get the opportunity to put the ball down in a safe atmosphere, there's just going to be a sense of gratitude among coaches and players that we get to play this game that we love.
Okay, next question will come from Leo Haggerty. Go ahead, Leo, your line's open. Might need to unmute yourself.
Gentlemen, thanks for doing this today. Appreciate it. Same question for all three of you. Start with Coach Rolovich and go south. Probably in your coaching career, you've never been away from your teams for this long for personal contact. What's the main thing you're really worried about when you finally get your team back together?
Making sure that we give them enough time to get physically ready for a season. That's one of the things for me. I actually think the positives of this, because these guys don't get a lot of time away from the building with their family. I think we were going to try to find a way to get them a few more weeks with their families, and they got a little bit more than we talked about. But I think it's given them a good opportunity to reset, see why they're really doing it, and but for me, it's them getting back and make us as coaches and administrators making sure they have enough time to get physically ready for a football season.
Yeah, I would echo that sentiment also, making sure that they're physically ready, making sure in the process before we even get there that our guys have the same community feeling that they had when they left. And talking to psychologists and a lot of different people, that this has been a tough time for a lot of guys, and trying to make sure that, yes, we're talking football when we get back to them, but at the same time that they know that we care about them, that We're glad they're with their families, but they miss their guys. They miss that camaraderie, and still trying to find ways to do that, keep that up, make sure they know that we care about them and that they're a big part of us and we're a big part of them, so that when we get back together, we can all be physically healthy and mentally, emotionally healthy as well.
Yeah, I think David and Rolo hit the nail on the head. It's the amount of time period between when it's safe enough for a whole 110 men to come back together with staff, and the amount of time period that you're given even prior to a training camp to be able to, one, get your kids in physical, functional football shape, prior to a training camp, so you don't have soft tissue injuries, so you don't have joint injuries, to prepare them, whether it's walkthroughs, strength and conditioning, OTAs, whatever you want to call it, those weeks that it's going to take to get them in functional football shape prior to going to a training camp that is very fast and very physical. That time period, it does take time before you go and start a season. And that's been the nature of a lot of our discussions in our meetings is, again, the health and safety of the player, and appreciative for that. But that's a big part when we come back is their preparation for a season.
All right, next question. We'll do a follow-up for Dennis Dodd. Go ahead, Dennis.
Putting a new patio in, so excuse me if you can't hear. Wanted to ask all three coaches what they considered in their own minds to be, I guess, a legitimate playoff. If there's only half the conferences participating, is that valid? If only some of the schools from some of the conferences are playing, is that valid? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Depending on what the schedule looks like, depending on how many people are playing, depending on who you're playing. If we go to a conference-only schedule, then how do you compare conference to conference? That's why there have been a lot of discussions about, for this year, do we expand the playoff? Because we're not really going to know how to whittle this thing down to 4. Whoever wins these conferences gets an automatic bid. If we're able to play 12 games somehow, some way, great, and it'll work its way out. So with so many unknowns, just like we were talking earlier, I think talking about all the scenarios is really the only way that we're going to have any idea. But if we're able to play 12 and we can stay status quo, that's great. Many of us believe that it's not going to be 12, and may not even start on time. So those other factors are going to affect however the bowl season looks, as well as the playoff.
Yeah, that's been all our discussions. It's all dictated on the structure of the regular season, whether it's a 12 game or abbreviated, that makes the change in bowl or playoff structure. So I think like we've talked about in our meetings, just the structure of the regular season will dictate the postseason, and a lot of its discussion.
Nick?
In my mind, I'm planning on playing Utah State game 1, so I don't think too much. I don't have a comment really about that other thing you asked about. I'm optimistic about, going with the 12 we got until they tell me differently.
David, I know you're on some of these committees. Have you guys had any direct conversations with Bill Hancock?
I have not personally. I know the commissioners have had initial conversations, and I think those conversations will advance, as Clay said, especially in the next month and a half, where the season looks like it's going. So that's a little bit of bigger offices than ours have to deal with that to a certain degree. But I know those conversations have at least started, but I think they'll get hot and heavy in about a month and a half.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, we'll take one more question. We'll go to Jesse Morrison. Your line is open.
Hi, this is for anyone who wants to take it, but Mark Emmert said that he needs to see campuses open, for class and everything before he sees any sports. I just wanted to get y'all's thoughts on that comment that he made.
I think where we are is the definition of a fluid situation. I think every state, as Rolo mentioned earlier, is going to be different. Every campus is going to be different. And I think that's a great sentiment, but I don't know that that's going to rule the day when it's all said and done. I think the President of the United States is going to have a weigh-in. I think every state governor is going to have a weigh-in. I think every president, provost, chancellor is going to have a weigh-in. There may be a scenario to where campuses are partially open. And if we can bring back athletes and bring back a section of the student body, that may not be exactly what Mr. Emmett was talking about, but that may be good for a certain university. And if they feel they're comfortable and ready to resume part of their normal activities and still field teams for fall sports, not just football, then I think that's going to be acceptable. So we'll see. Once again, this is extremely fluid.